by my colleague, MPP for Parkdale High Park, Bhutila Karpoche, and James Cohen, the Executive Director of Transparency International Canada. It's no secret that Ontario is experiencing the worst housing affordability crisis that it has seen in decades. In our city, people are sleeping in parks as they have nowhere to go. Over a third of renters in Ontario are paying unaffordable rent, and home prices have skyrocketed to levels that are well above what average Ontario incomes can afford. Housing needs to be about providing homes to people first and investors second. The goal of our comprehensive housing platform, the Ontario NDP's housing platform, is to ensure every Ontarian lives in a safe and affordable home. Our plan includes building 100,000 non-market social housing units. It includes better protections for renters so that they can live in a safe and well-maintained and affordable home. It includes measures to encourage the private sector to build sustainable and affordable homes that we need, including purpose-built rentals and missing middle homes in existing neighbourhoods. And it includes measures to clamp down on investor-led speculation in order to stabilise housing prices so Ontarians can buy their first home. Experts have been warning for years that home prices are being partially driven up by investors who buy and sell homes in Ontario and Canada to store wealth, to launder money, and cheat on their taxes. Investors can use the real estate sector for shady purposes because Ontario allows investors to buy and sell property anonymously, hiding their identity behind numbered corporations, trusts, and partnerships. And that is why myself and my colleague, MPP Bhutila Karpoche, are co-sponsoring a bill called the Anti-Money Laundering and Housing Act. This bill will establish a public land registry in order to reduce housing speculation, tax cheating, money laundering, and fraud in the real estate sector. Individual property owners are already required to disclose their identity in a registry, so this bill does not affect them. What our bill does do is require corporations, trusts, and partnerships that own real estate to also disclose their individual owners in the land registry. If we want to make it possible for Ontarians to buy their first home in Ontario, we need to stabilise housing prices, and that means clamping down on tax cheating and money laundering by creating a public land registry, and that is our goal today. I'm going to turn it over to James Cohen, the Executive Director of Transparency International Canada, to explain the need and the benefit of a public land registry. Thanks for joining us, James.
Thank you very much for having me, MPP Jessica Bell, and for inviting me to speak on behalf of Transparency International Canada at this important press conference. Housing prices are skyrocketing out of reach for many Ontarians, and the problem is in part caused by crooks, kleptocrats, and tax dodgers taking up residential space as safety deposit boxes for their dirty money. While operating an anonymous company or trust and purchasing property with them is not illegal, and it does not imply illegal activity, anonymous companies and trusts are the getaway cars for money laundering. And real estate is a preferred asset for money launderers to move their illicit funds into the legitimate economy. Canada's real estate sector was called out as being particularly vulnerable by the Financial Action Task Force, the global standard-setting body on anti-money laundering, in Canada's 2016 mutual evaluation. There's a number of reasons that crooks, kleptocrats, and tax dodgers like to launder their dirty money through real estate. These include real estate, particularly luxury real estate, is high value, which allows for large sums of cash to be laundered. Faulty invoicing for renovations adds more opportunities to launder. There can be opportunities to manipulate the value of property based on a launderer's needs, and a criminal can actually use their dirty asset to live in, enjoy where it's located, and even watch the value grow or make income from renting or Airbnb-ing the property. In a joint 2019 study, Opacity, Why Criminals Love Canadian Real Estate and What to Do About It, Transparency International Canada and our End Snowwashing Coalition partners found multiple risk indicators in Greater Toronto Area land titles between 2008 and 2018. These include the fact that 25% in residential mortgages were provided by unregulated lenders with no anti-money laundering reporting obligations. Corporate entities have acquired $28.4 billion in GTA housing in that decade. The vast majority of those companies are privately owned with no information on their beneficial owners. $9.8 billion in GTA housing was acquired by companies through cash or non-finance purchases during that period, much of it bypassing statutory AML checks on source of funds and beneficial owners. Our study was only able to review corporate ownership, so our risk assessment was not even able to gauge the risk posed by anonymous trusts and nominee ownership of property. While no tactic is a silver bullet, a publicly accessible land ownership transparency registry in Ontario is a crucial tool to fight money laundering. It will dissuade many who want to exploit our system, and it can greatly help detect and reveal those who want to take their chances to continue to launder their dirty cash. To succeed, the land ownership registry has to have proactive investigation capabilities, it needs data verification systems, and it has to be publicly accessible. I applaud MPP Jessica Bell for introducing this important legislation. Transparency International Canada and our partners hope that all Ontario's political parties will support this measure and that the Ontario government continues to promote beneficial ownership transparency like we saw in proposed amendments to the Business Corporations Act in Bill 43 in the Fall Economic Update. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you very much, James. I'd like to introduce my co-sponsor of the bill, MPP for Parkdale High Park, Bhutila Karpoche.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Bhutila Karpoche. I am the MPP for Parkdale High Park. Most people in Ontario grew up dreaming of owning their own home one day. Home ownership can provide much needed stability, both personal and financial. Homeowners don't have to worry about being rent evicted. Homeowners can pay into their own equity instead of into the pockets of some big corporate landlord. But skyrocketing housing prices have made owning home all but a fever dream. Speculation is a major driver of home prices. Buying a home has become nearly impossible for the average person and family. Toronto's housing market is ranked among the least affordable in the world, and Toronto's housing market has become a hotspot for money laundering. While most property records are publicly listed in Ontario Land Registry, a massive loophole exists where some buyers can remain anonymous. And this means that the Ontario Land Registry does not have information publicly disclosed. These buyers, referred to as beneficial property owners, have and continue to remain anonymous to the system, registering through corporations, numbered corporations, trusts, and partnerships. And this buying and selling of property anonymously has made Canada a global hotspot for money laundering and fraud, and Toronto its capital. As was just mentioned, the 2019 report by Canadians for Tax Fairness, Transparency International Canada, and Publish What You Pay Canada found $28.4 billion worth of housing was acquired in the GTA alone through anonymous ownership just between 2008 and 2018. That's the scale of the problem that we are talking about. And yet there's been no action. Successive governments, both Liberal and Ontario, have done nothing to crack down on shady real estate deals, including money laundering, tax evasion, and rampant housing speculation. The Ontario NDP is committed to improving housing affordability by clamping down on speculation and money laundering, among many measures. And that is why today, along with my colleague, MPP Jessica Bell, we're announcing the Anti-Money Laundering in Housing Act. This act will not only increase housing transparency and crack down on money laundering, requiring all companies and trusts registered or transacting in Ontario to identify their beneficial owners, but also will put an end to buying and selling property anonymously. The Anti-Money Laundering in Housing Act is long overdue in Ontario. It's time for us to catch up and fix the problem. Housing should be for people, not for speculation, and definitely not for money laundering. Thank you.
Thank you so much, James Cohen and MPP Karpoche, for joining us today. We are looking at introducing this bill early next week. If this is an issue that you're concerned about, I encourage you to contact your MPP and ask them to support our Anti-Money Laundering and Housing Act. Does anyone have any questions?
A reminder for any journalists on the line to please use the raise hand function. It looks like we have no questions on the line, so I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you so much for joining us today, James Cohen. Thank you so much, Bhutila. I'm looking forward to working with you, as we have been, to introduce this bill and make housing more affordable for everyone. Our housing sector should not be a place for fraud, money laundering, or tax cheating. In order for that to happen, we need to pass legislation in Ontario to make our real estate sector more affordable and more clean. Thanks for joining us today.